I would like to talk about Gumroad a fair bit, but I think it makes sense to at least begin with a chronological overview of everything you've done, because to be honest, it is ridiculous. The breadth of things that you've done is a joke. It really is insane. So can you give us like a brief overview of everything so far?
Yeah, so 2000, graduated from RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology, 2003. First job out of school was at a design firm called Pentagram, which is one of the largest independently owned design firms in the world. So I thought I was an okay designer, and then I got there and I was like, oh man, I suck. This like, because Paula Scher was a partner there, and she has like Netflix specials, and Michael Beirut is in there, designing the Hillary Clinton logo and the Citibank logo Paula did like on the back of a napkin in a cab. So just they don't necessarily pay really well, but they don't need to because it's almost like a grad school for design. You go in there and get to work with really amazing designers on really cool projects. So that was Pentagram for about 2.5, 3 years. And then I thought I'd dip my toe in advertising. I went to an agency called RGA, which it does a lot of things with Subaru, with Nike. In fact, when I got interviewed there, they were doing the new video for Rihanna and Nike, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna get to work on music videos and stuff like that." Well, I got there, I ended up working on the Johnson & Johnson team and doing Splenda banners all day. So I got out of there pretty quickly.
You didn't get a chance to ask for Rihanna's number then?
No. No, I never got to talk to her. And in fact, I did some stuff on Nike, but it was very intense. Like, I remember being in the office till 4 or 5 in the morning working on, it was right when Nike came out with the Nike running things. People didn't even understand how Bluetooth or any of that, RFID, how any of that worked. But it was one of the first things where they were tracking the shoe movement. So that was pretty cool, but it was just way too intense. The timelines were way too intense, and as fast as I can work, it was not anywhere near as fast. So I got out of that, went to an industrial design firm called Frog. There's 2 industrial design firms in the U.S. One is IDEO, and then the other is on the West Coast, and then Frog is on the East Coast. So, they're the ones who did the original Mac, one of the Mac computers, I think like the old Mac. The founder was Harmet Esslinger is the founder, and he worked with Steve Jobs on that like early computer, which is pretty cool.
Oh wow, that's very cool.
That company was very focused on user experience, which was really cool. So we would do things with the SAT company where we were developing SAT training for young kids and stuff in mobile games, and doing stuff for Sprint, like their new Wi-Fi product and things like that. Microsoft. That was really fun. It was very quiet. We had a lot of time to think and do things. The pace was way slower than RGA, which was much more my pace.
Do you prefer a fast speed of work, getting loads of work done, or do you think as a creative person it's better to go at a slower pace and in the long run you actually get more done of a high quality?
I always say that there's urgency, but don't take shortcuts, and don't sloppy. Like, sloppy is bad. If there's always an urgency, but there can't be a rush, because rush is where you start making compromises and the quality goes down, and that's when I can't work like that. Especially if the quality starts to suffer, then yeah, I have to check out at that point.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. So that was the cool thing about Frog, is there was still urgency there. You couldn't go on forever, but we would do things for GE and be able to really dive into what the users were doing, and a lot of that very thoughtful design. So that was Frog, and then I got a call from my friend at RIT who I'd met, Jake Lodwick. Jake had dropped out, and I thought, man, I don't know why he would drop out. And so he ended up selling Connected Ventures with his friend Ricky and Josh to IAC for like $20 million. And so, I got that one wrong. And he called me up. He said, hey, we have a small budget for this site called Vimeo that IAC is going to be putting money into. When IAC bought Connected Ventures, which was College Humor, Busted Tees, and Vimeo, they didn't really realize that they had purchased Vimeo at the time. Maybe they had, but they didn't really put any money into it. IAC put like $1 million into Vimeo, and that was the original team. So I think there was maybe 12 of us, maybe 10 of us. My future partner, Jonathan, was the GM at Vimeo at the time, and then I was design director. And it was just a small ragtag team. Like, we didn't really know what we were doing as far as marketing and things like that, but we just cared a lot about Vimeo, or we cared a lot about video, and we cared a lot about the community. So there were people always in and out. There were video creators. I know Casey Nestat was an early Vimeo user. He was always in there. A bunch of, and then College Humor had a bunch of people now that have gone on to do lots of great things. Like I remember a lot of the people from Silicon Valley, the HBO show, they were in there. They had done some, the lead character in Silicon Valley, curly hair, not the big guy, the nervous guy, the original founder. He was always in there. Yet. He was, it's amazing.
I need to watch it. Apparently it's very accurate.
Yes, it was very accurate. So. Reggie Watts was in there. He's now I think he's the lead musician for Seth Meyers. Sarah, I'm forgetting her last name. She's now a lead writer at SNL. So it was just a really cool place. And what was interesting at Vimeo, we always caught like kind of the Vimeo mafia, because there was a lot of people that came out of there that people don't realize that this was in the early days of New York startup scene, when the New York startup scene was really kind of booming. And Jake came over to my desk and he said, "Hey, this guy, my friend David Karp, is starting this site called Tumblr," and I gave him $25,000 to help, Tumblr. And the Tumblr crew and Vimeo were very intertwined, because they had used a lot of our embed features inside of Vimeo, and they were always embedding videos and stuff like that. The Tumblr crew was really great. And then Jake came to me and said, my cousin had started this other site called Bleacher Report, and I gave him $25,000 to start Bleacher Report. And then there was this guy, Zach, who we called him Iowa because he was from Iowa. It wasn't really a creative name, but Zach.
That's a good name.
He was always working on these like robots, and like we didn't understand. I didn't really understand what he was working on. I would always see his computer and see these models and 3D models and things, and I said, like, what are you building? And he said, "I'm building a printer that can print out other printers. Like, it can print things." I didn't understand it. It turns out that him and Bree Pettis had been at MakerBot, had created MakerBot. They called it RepRap in Brooklyn, and started MakerBot. So Jake had given Zach $25,000 as an investment into MakerBot.
Jake sounds like a fantastic investor.
Jake never got any credit until finally he got like this big spread in Inc. magazine, because like he was so good at it, but people didn't really know because he didn't talk about it a lot. So in like a span of like 3 or 4 years, Tumblr sold for $1 billion. Bleacher Report was like a few $100 million, and then MakerBot was also a few $100 million.
That's wild. So this is going on all around you.
Yeah, and I don't know if you ever play that iOS game Dots. Patrick Moberg, who was next to me, he created Dots Studio.
No way.
He sold that company for I don't know how much. And then Casey, who was next to me, Casey Pugh, started Star Wars Uncut, which was like the community where you could create the whole Star Wars movie with community clips. He won like an Emmy for that. Casey is just awesome, super smart guy. And then Josh, who was head of Busted Tees, ended up being the third employee at Uber. He's like he was the GM of the New York Uber, and he was at Busted Tees. And we didn't understand why he was going to work for a black cab company, because no one likes to take black cabs in New York because they're too expensive. And so it was Travis, and then one other, his partner, and then it was Josh. So Josh, once they went public, Josh is now a full-time VC and does whatever he wants to do.
That's super crazy. That's super crazy.
It was all around. It was all around everywhere. And it was just cool to be in that crowd. And so that was the Vimeo days. And then the GM there, Jonathan Marcus, and I started doing some freelance work on the side for him, and eventually like, hey, let's start a company. So we started a company called flavors.me, and I quit my job at Vimeo, which was really scary, but it was, I had to do the jump, and we raised, I think, maybe a couple $100,000 at first, but it took about a year. So I was burning through all my savings, just had a baby, my son Jack, just bought an apartment in Hoboken, 2008, where everything crashed. So that was an adventure. And then Flavors had an offer on the table from Facebook. We went through the whole acquisition process, and we said no, which probably cost us each, $30-40 million. I don't know how much it would have been, because the stock price was like maybe $12 at the time, and now, obviously it's in the hundreds. So that was a lesson. But at the time, it just, a lot of people were in tech were like, Facebook wasn't doing well, and it was right when they had started that, like, the app was HTML5, and it just was, the app was crappy. I remember when that came out, and like people were just, the quality just wasn't there. And so people were doubting Facebook, and we didn't want to work for a big company. So I think it worked out in the end. I mean, it just wasn't really meant to be. And then we started another company called Goodsy, which is an e-commerce platform. And we ran Goodsy for about 10 years and kind of living that startup lifestyle. It was very up and down. At the end of Goodsy, we had an offer on the table from Etsy. We had gone through meeting after meeting after meeting, hours and hours and hours. We had executive approval. Everything was awesome. And then they fired their CEO, Chad, and they lost, like, I don't know how many hundreds of millions on the stock market. And it just, everything blew up. So I think there were maybe 3 or 4 deals on the table at the time. Ours was one of them that got blown up. And then it was kind of like just dropping an atom bomb on our finances, because we weren't really making payroll because we didn't have to. We were ready to be acquired. So that was a really stressful time. You don't even have money for groceries, almost lose the house. Like, it was bad. But I didn't expect anybody to feel bad for me. In fact, I was kind of embarrassed, because I'm like, what am I going to tell people? I chose to do this. This was my fault. This wasn't anybody's fault. I chose to go into a very risky direction, and this is what happens. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. So I wasn't really public about it, because I didn't want anyone to feel bad for me, because it was my own doing. And then, so that was where you kind of build up your, life as an entrepreneur, and you've got to really suck it up and take the pride out of it. The pride was just kind of smashed out of me. I thought I was Mr. Cool Entrepreneur. It doesn't matter. The thing about the internet is you can act like Mr. Cool Entrepreneur or Mrs. Cool Entrepreneur, or whatever you want to call yourself, and things can be horrible behind the scenes and nobody ever know. You're still cool online or whatever, but that's not always the case. Especially when you start seeing these acquisitions of companies that they get press in the paper, in the blogs and stuff, like, hey, we got acquired, but when in reality, the investors wanted to save face, so they got a deal done behind the scenes that was basically for no money. It was an acqui-hire, but that they call it an acquisition, and everybody gets to say they were acquired by Google or something. So it was a lot of smoke and mirrors, which now I'm privy to, and I don't. I think that was a lesson for me, just to be like, look, at any time any of this could be pulled out from under you, and you can't ever think that you're better. We all need each other. We all need entrepreneurs. We all need people to work for the entrepreneurs or build the products. We need designers. We need community support. We need all of these things. We all work together, because without each other, we wouldn't be able to pull off any of these things. So that was my lesson going through that. I had a consulting client at the time who had started a company called Follow Up Boss, which is a real estate CRM, and that took off. I mean, it's very niche in the real estate world, but they work for some of the, or their software is used by some of the top real estate teams in the whole country. Now I think they're probably at 100 employees. If they're, I don't know how many tens of millions of dollars are doing in revenue now, but they grew really fast and got to be on the early team there, which was really cool. And then realizing, like, okay, I told my wife, I said, look, I'll get a job for a little bit just to, like, calm everything down. Like, just so things are a bit more predictable. And I did that for 2.5 years, 3 years, I think, maybe 2.5. And it's just not for me. It doesn't mean the people there were great. The product was cool. It just wasn't me. And so I talked to my friend Chad Pugh, who's actually Casey Pugh's brother. I worked with him on the early Vimeo team. Really amazing designer. And he talked to me about what it's like for him going independent and how he structures client work and things like that. And so I said, I think that's what I want to do. Before I would start startups and I would W-2, I would be W-2 employee. A lot of this is kind of U.S. based, and this time I'm like, I want to go full-time independent, like Jack Zerby Consulting LLC, right? And Jack be the holding company for all these things. And I could go into, so I'll go into kind of my methodology later, but I'll just tell you just on the surface of how these things went. So
yeah, sure. I have lots of questions for each stage.
Yeah. So Sid, I did some, when Goodsy kind of blew up, my partner Jonathan went to be head of product at Teachable. And I worked with the Teachable team for about a year and met Sid, who was really just a really great product designer, product manager at Teachable. Sid went to high school with Sahil, at Gumroad, and they had been friends from way back. After Teachable, Sid went to Gumroad and worked for a little bit while he was creating Circle.so, the community software. And
okay.
I think Sahil ended up investing in it as well. And it gave Sid kind of a baseline of work to support himself while he then could create Circle. So Sid and I got to know each other just, he was a new dad at the time. We would talk all the time, and I was encouraging him as much as I could, and even introed him to some of the investor friends I knew who ended up investing in Circle. And, I didn't expect anything. It's just like, hey, I like helping out other entrepreneurs. I know some things. I've made a lot of mistakes. I can share that, what it's like to be a dad and a startup founder and things. So, I had been following Sahil for a while. I always knew about him. And then I saw that Sid had worked for him, and I reached out to Sid. I said, do you think you could give me an intro to Sahil? It's like, of course. And this was the key thing. One principle with this is I didn't just hop on the phone with Sahil. I said to Sid, I'm like, you are in the product team. What is the most important thing to Sahil right now for the next 6 months? What does he want to build? Where is Gumroad heading? And so he told me, and we talked about user-generated design systems and things like that. So I did a whole presentation. I was at the beach at the time, and at night, in the morning, when the kids weren't up, I just worked on this presentation, sent him a Figma document with a Loom video. We had a little chat over Zoom, boom, done. And that was it. We agreed on the deal, and then I put my 2 weeks notice in, and I was a free agent, which
cool.
was really cool. And then from Gumroad, that's where now I had the platform to go on and start all these things. So that is where I kind of have to, there's so many things I have to kind of remember. So right now it is, let's see the tag. So I have DoHQ, which is getdohq.com, which is text message training software. So it's kind of like a Teachable, except it's run everything through text messaging, SMS.
Cool.
But it's action based. That one's a really fun one. I have an agency called Design for Decks, where we do high-end pitch deck design, custom pitch deck design for companies that are raising seed, all the way up to IPOs. So, some decks will be $20,000, $30,000 for a company to go public, which is pretty important for them as they're doing their roadshow and things like that. So I have two partners in that, Sam and Aton, and that's just a really fun business. It was kind of pulled out of me. I had done decks for myself and for other founders, and I actually ended up shutting the business down in the early days because it was just me, and I'm like, I can't scale this, so I need partners. So I brought on some partners. That one grew like crazy, and we purposely stopped doing as many because we just really wanted to get the process down, but there's definitely a need for it. So that's designed for decks. Then I have another company called Biddy, which is biddyhq.com. Biddy is bid service package management for architects. Basically, we allow architects to create white label sites so that when they have a project they're working on, they can sell the blueprints to people who want to bid on the project. So they pay $100 and they get access to the files to then bid on the project. That one is growing like crazy. I think we have maybe 60 to 70,000 contractors on it. It
Wow.
does, 40 to 50,000 a month in digital downloads at like $100. Very niche, but really cool. Just a really fun project. I partner with my friend Brendan on that, who's been in that industry for a long, long time. So that's Biddy. And then Staked I worked with Staked. That was Jonathan's company. They're a crypto company. They do staking. When I first started with Jonathan working on it for about 2 years, I worked on the brand and the app. And he's like, I can pay you in cash. I can pay you in equity. I was like, I need the cash. So I just took the cash. Well, Staked ended up selling to Kraken for one of the largest acquisitions in crypto history. I was like, so Jonathan now, I can't tell you the exact number, but it's not tens of millions anymore. It's beyond that. So, yeah. So that's another, you never know. Like, it could have been nothing. I could have gotten no cash, nothing. It could have been worth zero. So you just never know. But Jonathan is like the epitome of an entrepreneur, just always getting back up to bat next time. So that's Staked. So I worked with the Stake team and now start working with the Kraken team and starting to do some work with them just as a pure consultant, hourly, nothing. And I can explain kind of the different business models that I have. And then another one as a kind of a retainer designer contract with Warp.dev. Zach, who I had done their original deck for, he was one of the original Google, he was one of the Google engineers on Google Slides, reinvented the command line, the terminal, and raised a bunch of money for that. And I just work with their team to crank out pretty much anything they need on a daily basis.
Wow.
And then another site called Happy Detailer, which is a company I started with my friend Dave and Ryan, where we create white label software for mobile car detailers. So there's no real software specifically for mobile car detailing. So scheduling, booking, payments, clients, all that kind of stuff. That one is already launched. We have an MVP out there now. And we're launching the main software probably in the next 60 days. And then we have another one called Dogma, which I started with my friend John, which is going to be really fun. We're almost $1 million into the build because mobile is very expensive, and I have a lot of lessons there for how to build mobile apps.
So
but
how much?
About $1 million in to the build. I can explain why that should not have been that much, but Dogma is basically TikTok for debate. So pick any topic and you can see people across a wide variety of opinions, and you can go deep down any opinion. So I can see everybody that disagrees, somewhat disagrees, agrees, somewhat agrees, down any silo of opinion. That's going to be fun. That's purely a passion project. I don't even really care if it makes money. I mean, we hope that it makes money, but it's really just we feel like we want to contribute to the internet in that regard. And then,
That's
that's it, pretty much. Yes, that's it.
Okay, firstly, that is wild. I hate it as like growing up when I see something on Twitter and everyone's like, oh, you need to niche down, just do one thing for 10 years and then make it. That fills me with dread. So I'm happy to see that there must be ways to manage multiple things.
It's okay. Like, I used to feel bad and beat myself up, be like, I don't stick to things. Like, I love the initial stages, like I do. And then once it starts to really roll, then we have people that take over and roll it out. Like, it's okay to be like that. If you like the new, you like the taking these abstract concepts, bringing them down, the building the part of it, that's okay. I've just learned to embrace that. And there's arguments to be made both ways, you know? So, yeah.
So do you have a holding company that holds all of these brands within them? Is that how it's structured?
Yeah, so I have, each one of them has their own LLC. So each one will have its own LLC depending on the partners that I have. And then that LLC is simply a pass-through, so we're not paying taxes on that LLC. The money just is then distributed to the partners whenever we want to, and then I pay. That money goes into my Zerby Consulting kind of master LLC, and then that's treated as revenue. And even that's a pass-through. It doesn't get taxed, or it actually hits my personal bank account. So I'm actually an S Corp at this point now, so I'm the sole employee of Zerby Consulting.
So how come it doesn't get taxed?
These are like complicated tax questions that you definitely should not take my advice. I hire people to do that. Like, it's basically meaning like it just operates as the money that passes through it, and so it doesn't unless that money is distributed to partners. It's not taxed.
Okay.
Again, do not take my advice on it. I pay bench.com a lot of money to do my accounting and bookkeeping, and then I just hired a new accountant that is doing all that for me. So definitely check with your accountant. But that's kind of how it definitely, as you're starting a new business, get an LLC and get a separate bank account. That's what I do. I use mercury.com for a lot of those bank accounts, which is really, really easy to set up. I found that when you go to like the local bank, there's just a lot of hoops that you have to jump through. And for the amount of different projects that I'm doing, like, it's just hard because sometimes if you go to your local bank, you need to have that partner physically there to sign things. And that's a pain. And a company like Mercury works really well with Stripe. So it's just, it's really simple and smooth. And then for LOCs, I don't use any of the, services that do that. I used Stripe Atlas one time, just felt overpriced. Just go to your local state website, create the LLC, and get your EIN number or whatever number that is in your country, and just do it yourself. Once you do it a few times, it's pretty easy.
Yeah, that's very, very cool. And for people in the UK, LLC is limited company, and Mercury.com. I don't think they've expanded to the UK yet, but
Bank, there might be some other similar services. Yeah,
there's plenty out there. So how much of your time is spent on all of these versus how much are they now live and just operating, and you're there to maybe put out fires, sell it a bit?
Yeah, so it's important in all of these things to have a really good team. That is the thing. If you don't have a team that you can trust and you have complementary skills and you know that you can trust them to do what they say they were going to do, that's the key to the whole pie. So in the case of Biddy, we have my partner Brendan, who handles a lot of the sales, a lot of the new business conversations. We have Vin, who handles a lot of the back office things. So Vin is basically in the Biddy software all day, every day, dealing with 50 to 60 open projects, maybe more at a given time, live construction projects that are millions of dollars. So we can't afford to make even one mistake, because the consequences in the US, the bidding, and probably in the UK as well, like when you're doing bidding process, especially public projects, everything has to be kind of by the rules. And if you get one number wrong and a bidder says, well, I didn't see that number and therefore I lost a $10 million bid, like now we're liable. So that Biddy is running on its own as far as what the business is doing now. But as far as new features, bugs, whatever, I work with Hans, who's our lead developer. All my developers that I hire, every single one except for Gumroad, are all through TopTal, TOPTAL. They have the highest quality developers that I've worked with. If you hire a developer directly, you just don't have someone to manage the invoices. And the thing about TopTal, which I like, is they want to preserve their reputation inside of TopTal, so they'll do a good job so they keep getting more work. Otherwise, they don't get more work from TopTal if anyone complains. So in every one of these projects, I have TopTal, which then has a project manager, so I can talk to them if there's any issues with hours or billing or whatever. And So I would say Biddy is pretty much running on its own. Happy Detailer is in the process of being built, which will eventually, it's always, for me, it's getting it up and running, have partners that are running it, and then I'm in charge of executing new things. So that's pretty much true on every project. That's my kind of ownership percentages versus any of the consulting stuff. It's very transactional.
What is your hourly rate, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, that's interesting.
For consulting.
So it's $250 an hour is like my top rate, but it depends on.
That seems cheap.
What's that?
That seems cheap.
Well, I know my wife would say the same thing. It's funny. You have to adapt to whatever context that you're in. If $250 an hour, it depends on the amount of hours that you're going to be working. It depends on the consistency of it. My rate on Gumroad is lower. Sahil used to publicly display those rates. I don't think he does anymore. But the consistency of Gumroad allows for a lower rate, which is easier because it's more consistent. So that way it's not like turning on and off and blah, blah, blah. So it's really, that is worth a reduction because of the consistency. Again, my goal is to really get at a lot of these hourly situations. I think Gumroad is the exception just because it's a really fun project. But hourly is just not a great business model. It's not. But I tell entrepreneurs, like, cash flow is king. I can work on all of these things. And if I'm worried about cash flow, I'm going to hurry. So a thing like Happy Detailer, if I'm really concerned about cash flow, I'm going to be rushing that and making the new customers wary because I'm being too urgent about, hey, did you get that check in? You get that check? We need to get that check in. We need to get you to buy this. And it just creates a vibe that is hard to hide. So what I always say is, like, if you have this foundation of hourly, you know that's predictable. And if you know your burn rate, I have 3 kids. It's a family of 5. We have a house. We have mortgages. We have cars. We have pets. We have private school, soccer, dance, like all of these things that you've got to have cash flow. I can't pay my mortgage with equity. It's just not going to happen. So I think a lot of times entrepreneurs will have too much pride, and they'll be like, well, I'm a cool startup founder. I don't do hourly work. Why would I do that? I'm like, no, I need that money is to prevent any stress on me so I can say, okay, what's my burn rate? So if I look at my burn rate and I say, okay, for a family of 5, it's, let's say it's $10K a month. I got to look and say, okay, well, how many hours at $200 an hour, let's say if it's a consistent thing, how many hours do I have to work for 10K a month? So if I do this, I take, that 10,000 divided by 250 is 40 hours divided by, so let's say I'm doing 20 hours. So if I do 2 hours a day, I've paid my bills. That's nothing, right? So if you now, again, look at taxes and say, actually, it's not 10K because 30% of that goes to the government tax. So you have to, add another 30% in there. But either way, it's like 2 or 3 hours, which is nothing. So if you get up at 7 in the morning, you work till 9, you're done the rest of the day. And that's where you work on your assets. So you have your trade time for money. That pays the bills. That takes all the stress away. So now when you build your assets, you're a lot more methodical. You're way more patient. You don't want to be taking the profit out of the business. Why would you do that? Like, take the profit out of the business, put it back in the business. I think a lot of people will rely on assets immediately for income and starve the business of money and not allow that money to be reinvested because they need it to pay their mortgage or their grocery bill. So don't ever get too cool for hourly unless your company, unless you're Jonathan, my partner Jonathan, who sold his company for all kinds of millions of dollars. He can do whatever he wants, right? But when you're still in the grind, and I consider myself still very much in the grind, you've got to be able to do that. And, doing that with all those things combined, you can hit, I think this year will be in the 450 range. And then, my goal this year is to do $500,000 in revenue through my personal LLC, which is great because it's a combination of all different things and things. But then I talked to my friend the other day who's doing $750,000 a year, and I'm going to learn from that. I'm actually having a meeting on Thursday. I paid for $500 for a half hour of his time.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah,
from Design Joy. Yeah. Why would I not pay $500? How do you know that's not going to make me an extra half $500,000 over the next however many years? I like his model. I'm very curious about it. And I hate the hourly model, and I really like it. So we'll see. I don't want to run companies with 50 employees that do 100 million in revenue. If I do $1 million a year, that's great. In pure cash, that's like, why would, especially where I live in Pennsylvania, I'm not in New York. That's a really great lifestyle. That's like a top tier surgeon lifestyle. And I'm nowhere near as smart as a surgeon, so that's kind of.
Would you ever consider an offer for maybe something, say someone comes along who can run design for decks and they've got a specific skill set that can really grow the company? Would you ever consider an offer so it takes it off your plate and you can focus on the things that you're better at?
Yes, I'm always going to consider things like that. Okay. That would be, have to be a very unique situation. That person had to be very good at what they do. But I'm always curious. I'm always open. I'm always having conversations constantly. And I think you have to be open for that. Like I'm having a conversation with my friend John, who I've worked on some companies with, and we may be starting like a children's book, like AI company or something. I don't know, but it sounds fun, right? So that's what you have to be kind of open and curious and look for problems to solve. Don't look for solutions and then find problems. Like everybody has a solution of AI and they're trying to find all these, they're trying to solve it with all these things. Like find the problem and maybe it could be solved with AI, but maybe not. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like DALL-E, it's not really solving a problem. Well,
it could.
It's got.
You don't know.
Yeah, you're right.
That's where that's where the entrepreneur needs to come in and figure that out.
No, I think that's all. Everything you just said is great advice. I run a website design agency. I wake up at 6 a.m. I work on that till 9.
Yes.
And I go to my full-time consulting job.
Yes.
Then on the weekend, I do this podcast. And my theory or my thesis is that by doing multiple things, at least for a period of time, they all lend themselves to each other.
Yes.
Same accountant, the same holding company, the same, if I was to get branding, the same branding agency, the same, all of these things. Is that true from your experience?
Yeah, some of them are kind of separate, but there's a lot of complementary things that happen in between a lot of these things. I think having the same agency like TopTal hire a lot of these developers is a helpful thing to connect a lot of these things and how I manage it. I have the same design process for every single one. Every single one from 0 to 1, I follow the same thing. It's software. It's the same thing every single time. And sometimes the different companies can kind of play off each other. So you have to be strategic. Like Design for Decks, I was approached by a VC firm to design their website. And typically I'm like, I don't like doing those projects because they take a while. And it's hard to price them. So I did it because this company has a portfolio of 900 startups.
Which VC?
fjlabs.com. So they're a really cool company. It was surprising because sometimes clients can be a real pain, but they were really awesome to work with. And now, we'll probably end up doing their next giant LP deck. Plus, they have a lot of startups that maybe we can start working with those. So you have to be strategic in that regard. If that's a complementary thing that I typically maybe not would have taken, but like I'd love to develop a relationship with this company. Box Group is the same. I did the Box Group website. That's Dave Tisch who runs Box Group. Dave was one of our early investors and is one of the best kind of angel investors in New York. His family, the Tisch family, they own the Jets, they own oil companies, they own Tisch School of Business. There's like plaques with their name all over New York. But Dave is just an awesome, one of the coolest, nicest, like, he really cares about you. Like, we talk all the time, and he cares about the family. But he's, his family this is like a multi-billion-dollar family. But he's awesome. So again, with Box Group, I did their initial brand stuff and logo, and then we've worked with so many of their startups on decks and things like that. So
Yeah, that's amazing. So I do decks sometimes as well, not nearly with the experience or probably quality that you do for design for decks. Like 30K for an IPO deck, that's a deck. That's
and
not just like a
takes,
presentation.
I mean, it'll take me, when I was doing them myself, for a 10 slide deck would take me 30 or 40 hours of every single pixel, recreating and redrawing every graph with every number. So we put a lot of time into those, so that's why we're able to charge those prices.
What do you think is the most important thing within a slide deck then? And this applies to from a designer's perspective or a founder's perspective. Are you focusing on the storytelling? Are you focusing on the copywriting, making sure everything's clear? Or I'm sure it's a combination, but what for you is the most pivotal part?
Yeah, I think I teach like a whole kind of masterclass on this, and it's really about the cooperation between the design and the content. If it's a really great story with really great content, but the design is horrible, and it actually distracts from the story and actually takes away from the story. Imagine if you had a story like Lord of the Rings that was so amazing, but the acting was horrible, or the scenes and the sets and the costumes were just horrible. It wouldn't work. So you have to have the marriage of those two. So that's what I look for initially is it a great story by itself? So often when I'm working with founders and things like that, I'll say, just put the story in the slide. I don't care how it looks, as ugly as possible. That's fine. I don't need it designed. So that way we can see, is it a compelling story? Does it add up? Does it flow from one to the next to the next? So there's a lot that goes into that. Where is the problem super painful and clear and picturable? Or is it just a weak kind of like, hey, you've seen so many, I've seen so many like these where they're just like, and they'll say dead. They'll be like, I don't know what it would be. Like, bike riding is dead or something like that. Like, bike ride, we need to improve bike ride, or like bikes or something like that. It's just like not picturable enough versus saying like, hey, we're creating bikes for people who, for elderly people who want to get out and ride around. They're creating these really special, specific bikes and talking about painful, picturable problems about bike accidents. Or I'm getting kind of morbid here, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I want to
you're making
feel
it human,
that.
Right?
Yeah, it's got to
adding
really
human stories to it.
Yeah, and it's got to be very specific. Don't just say you're creating restaurant software because restaurants lose thousands a year. What does that mean? 999,000, or does it mean $1,000? Right? Like, what qualifies as thousands, and what's the scale of that? Is that a lot to a restaurant? I don't know. So I want to see specific things and specific problems, and then I want to talk, and then I want to see about see the solution, but not the solution as the company, but the solution as a concept. So if I'm Elon Musk and I'm pitching Tesla, and I'm saying like the problem is renewables, and the problem is getting us off fossil fuels and things like that. The solution is EV, electric vehicles, not Tesla. Tesla just happens to be best positioned to be able to solve that problem and create that solution. So that way, then you're defending the concept, not the company, because I can argue that Tesla is not the solution, but I can't really argue that the electric vehicles. It's harder for me to argue that as a concept. So that way, you're not putting the company on the spot and making the company defend itself. You're putting the concept on the spot and making the concept defend itself. And it's a lot easier for a concept to defend itself than it is the company, because the company can be your bias, obviously. So they know you're going to be talking it up. But if you have the concept, it's a little easier. So then I want to see the problem with the solution. So you say, okay, well, EVs are the solution. Well, that's great. But how many who have tried to do that and failed? And this is why this is what happened to this company, tried to solve it. This is what happened to this company. So now I'm kind of one level deep on the problem, the solution, and the problem with the solution. And then, so that way then I'm answering those objections to the investor, just like any good salesperson, you want to answer the objection before you get it. And then the last thing is, when you get to the product demo, don't lose the story. I did a demo one time at New York Tech Week of Goodsy, and Michael Bloomberg was there, and there was like maybe 1,000 people from tech in there, and I was really nervous. I don't know what it was. It was just the pressure of it, and I nerded out on the demo, and I just talked about, like, we're using this technology for this, and blah, blah, blah. It was so bad. And one of our investors came up to after me. He's like, that was the worst presentation I'd ever seen. I was like, I know. And so then now I tell founders, I'm like, when you get to the demo, don't nerd out, but make it part of the solution. So you could say, and this is our solution. So Jane, who used to have this problem, is now using our app with this feature and this feature. And now Jane's life is this. So you're keeping that story. Don't lose the story as you get to your product demo.
That's actually the niche I'm going for with my websites and my pitch decks. Is I want to work for technical founders who haven't worked out the storytelling side of things, because I think that's united my interests and what I'm good at. Like the last company I was working for was a VR company aiming to provide VR scenarios for psychedelic therapy.
Oh, wow.
And they were just super scientific, and like everything there had makes sense because they're so clued in on the subject and smart. So like it's actually quite useful having like I suppose an idiot's mindset, because I can just be like, that doesn't make sense. And it won't make sense to everyone else. So, yeah, that's cool. I really wanted to get in a piece about Dogma.
Yeah.
So, you talked about in one of your Substack pieces, which I'll leave a link to, that you need to be able to deliver your pitch in 60 seconds. And I suppose with Goodsy that day, you didn't manage to do that.
Yes.
Can you deliver a Dogma 60-second pitch?
Right now?
Right now.
That's good. That's good, because this will be good media training when I have to talk about this. I think the thing for Dogma is right now we know that this binary conversation online is causing a lot of problems. It's agree, disagree. It's 1 or 0. You're either with the enemy or you're the enemy, or you're not the enemy or you're this, or you're bad or you're good. All of these things between this kind of off, on, good, evil, good, bad, all of these things are caused by this binary division. And that's why you see in the media landscape things 1 or 0. And so what we're looking for is, how do you create the nuance in between these conversations? Because there's so much nuance in any given topic. So at Dogma, we take any controversial topic, no matter what it is, it could be across any different topic, and say you can either go left, right, up, or down. So left, right is going wide in your perspective across somewhat agree, neutral, somewhat disagree, across a wide variety. And then you can go down any spectrum of opinion to go deeper inside of that. So the goal is to widen people's perspectives, open them up to challenge their ideas. Will this be for everyone? Absolutely not, because there's a lot of people that won't be open to challenging their ideas. But at Dogma, we hope to create better conversations that ultimately could lead to changed hearts and minds. A lot of the conversations you hear out there, they're not trying to change hearts or minds. If you believe that you're right and you want to create and you want to pitch the reason why you think you're right, and you're attacking the other side, you're never going to bring them to your side. So if you look at the why of why people are on social media, having all of these conversations, some of them may be to just offend the other side, but I think there's a lot that really do want to affect change and actually change hearts and minds. So that's what we think that we're going to do at Dogma. Is it naive? Absolutely. We could be totally incorrect, and this is all relies on human nature. And we believe the best of human nature, and if that happens, great. If it doesn't, then we've attempted. And no one's going to change anything unless they're trying to do these things. So that's what we're doing.
I think that's a super cool idea. I think that's amazing. I listened to a podcast last week between 2 feminists, and they're talking about hookup culture, and the host laid out an argument and then asked them each, and they both said their piece.
Yeah.
And then didn't argue.
I love it.
was so nice because then you can make your own opinion.
Well, the
And
cool thing that we're doing, it was in that demo video, but the big part of this, the one I'm most excited about, my partner John's most excited about, are called Dogma rooms. So if you remember, I mean, you may not follow U.S. politics, but when they had the Trump-Biden debate, it was a total embarrassment for the whole country. Like, Biden was interrupting, Trump was interrupting. The moderator was like completely powerless. He couldn't stop them. And it's just two old angry guys yelling at each other. And I said, what if we could have a debate that was moderated by the app? So when you go onto any of these Dogma, anything. So you say, let's pick something tame, like Bitcoin will be the currency of the future. And just like with chat roulette or with Omegle, you could actually, or even like look at like Call of Duty, where you click and you get matched with someone who has the slightly opposite or polar opposite view than you. And you each get 3 rounds. I think it's 60 seconds of 3 rounds. And the app just cuts you off. So when you have time when it's your turn, you have 60 seconds and that's it. You don't get any more time. And then you have these really succinct debates in a bite-sized format. And this is where I can share my screen really quickly. So when you come in here, the U.S. should raise the debt ceiling. You can see some other rooms that are happening. But you can say, hey, I want to start a room. It waits for a match. You find a match that's someone with a different opinion. They accept that match. Boom, you're taken into a live Dogma room. You have a timer here, round 2, 1, 2, 3. And then after it, the audience is asked if they've changed or updated their position after that. So
interesting.
That's going to be a fun one. That's another kind of naive thing. Like, oh my gosh. The chances of this being totally abused is off the charts, but
yeah, I think selection bias would be a big issue. Like, what sort of person is going to want to come and argue? Maybe. I mean, who knows?
There will be people that will not do it. I personally wouldn't, but there will be a lot of people that are out there. If you look at TikTok and Instagram Reels, there's so much good content on these issues that's so hard to find if you're trying to look for it. On TikTok, it's like cat video, fail video, fail video, really great political commentary on one particular issue. And then it's surrounded by a whole bunch of crap. So if those creators, which there are thousands of, I wouldn't say millions, but thousands, if you were able to go on Dogma and choose between 30,000 different creators that are very well, can articulate their ideas really well, like that's enough, because then the other people are then participating in other ways. So that one's going to be fun.
Would you curate people who can be in the feed?
Yeah, that's going to be the other piece of like, we do have, you can follow people, but we may even take the TikTok approach where it's more of an algorithmic. But again, this is going to be a process of discovery. We haven't answered those questions because we want to get it out. And I could explain why we're not live. I mean, there's so many mistakes that I made. But hopefully we're live definitely by this summer, if not the spring, and then we'll start learning.
I was thinking it'd be quite hard to separate people. Say someone's really opinionated on a topic like abortion, and they're listening to someone who's pro-abortion or the other side. It's going to be, how do you know that it's unlikely they've separated their emotions from their judgment of the ideas, logic, trustworthiness, or love, which are the 3 metrics that each one could be rated on, correct? Yes.
And that goes into the quality of the argument, because that's taken from Socrates and Plato. I think it was Socrates. I should have known that, actually, because we spent like months and months and months going over ethos, pathos, logos, and how do you structure quality arguments. If you're saying, look, I'm a doctor and you should listen to me about some specific health issue, and you present a really illogical argument and you're relying completely on authority, that's not a quality argument. You can't just say, listen to me because I'm a doctor. You actually have to go through logic. If you go through and say, all you're doing is just being entirely emotional or no logic. That's where we're be able to find. We don't care. We're not. That's why I'm very careful with the words that I use. It's not right or wrong opinion. That's subjective, but there is a quality in how you deliver that opinion. Because you can be right and deliver it completely inefficiently. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder if AI could be used to, it can definitely tell emotional language.
It could, and I think that's what's really fun about it. When we started Dogma, there wasn't really much talk about AI. There was, but it wasn't really accessible. Now, the crazy thing is, I imagine maybe Dogma that you could type into it, because it's all video based. You would type into it and actually like create an AI generated video avatar to actually say your message. Because I think a lot of people will be nervous about expressing their opinion on tough topics. So we need to figure out what the best way to anonymize certain things. But is it good to be anonymous or not? I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So we're going to have to deal with the same thing other social media companies are dealing with. Maybe we have some sort of advisory board from all different backgrounds and opinions, so that it's not. We do not want this to be a liberal platform or a conservative platform. We don't. It's going to be a very offensive platform to both sides.
Yeah.
Everyone should be offended.
It's kind of the ideal time. I mean, Elon, Lex, Joe Rogan, this is their narrative right now. Like, this is a great time to... You should actually get some of them on the
that's the goal, that we would have these like Dogma room events. Because I used to love the debates on Clubhouse. But the problem with Clubhouse is you have a moderator, but everyone's yelling over each other. And they never really figured out a good way to create structure. It almost was like the same thing as the Trump-Biden debate, and everyone's yelling, and nobody can get control of anybody. And then they would just kick people out of the room, and then they'd be mad. It's just so.
Yeah, I want to be like short videos that you watch, and then that's it, and there's no back and forth. Is good.
So you watch one debate, you get 3 minutes from each side on that debate, and because I want to know, because there's certain issues I'm like, how can they walk through the logic of that? Like, it seems to be so clear, but they are saying things that just so counterintuitive. I would love to know what their logic is. I don't believe that they aren't intelligent. They must have a way they can walk themselves through it, and I want to know that, but I don't know where to find that. I'm not going to go to Reddit. Twitter's all over the place, and you can't find it. So we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting. I'm excited to watch that unfold. Yeah. A good friend of mine based out of Texas is building a rival to LinkedIn where you upload. It's like TikTok for job search. So you upload a selfie video for 30 seconds, blah, blah, blah. This is why I'm good for this role. And then the employer goes like that, or whatever.
Oh, that's cool.
Which I think is a cool idea.
Yeah.
But my wonder was, and it applies to you guys as well, how many people are going to be too self-conscious to record themselves in a video? Or do you think that's changing? Because I feel like that's changing as decades roll by.
Yeah, I think it'll probably take the same approach that Instagram and all these other platforms have, where it's basically 80-20. It's always going to be 20% of the audience is willing to do that. Because a lot of people are just not willing to go on video and do that, and we understand that. So it's going to be a very engaged. It's still the double-sided marketplace, right? You have people who be able to create and people be able to view. So I think, and I'm okay with that it's not like every Dogma needs to have 17 million different views. If in any Dogma, especially the evergreen ones like abortion, which will always, it's not like a current thing, it'll always be there, or drug legalization or marijuana legalization, or immigration, all of these things. If we have 5 categories and there's like, a few hundred in each one, like that's good enough. Like I think at some point people will start to repeat themselves. I'm okay with that. And so then what I think will be really interesting is the Dogma rooms where you're able to log in and see debates from the people that you resonate with and people that you don't resonate with on current issues. So it's the same way with Clubhouse. You know, if you look at Clubhouse, if there's 400 people in the room, there's only 10 up there. It's just the way that humans are.
That is a really cool idea. I think that's like quite a spiky idea as well. By that I mean, the use case is super direct. That could almost be like the entry point to the platform for people. Like, I don't know if you follow crypto, but like crypto Twitter, that needs a space for like traders to speak to each other one-on-one and talk about how the macro impacts the price of Bitcoin and things like this.
Yeah, and those are some of the best rooms in Clubhouse. But they're not structured, and it's hard. And if you come in late and you want to watch the replay, and there's like all this noise, and like you're sitting there for 2 hours, like I would listen to them while I'd mow the lawn, and there was just so much wasted time. But if I can go in and just put it on autoplay, and then listen to like 10 different structured debates on something, I'm probably going to walk away with a lot more information and opinions that maybe I hadn't considered before. Which are really interesting.
In the spirit of what you said earlier about when you're approaching someone like you approach Sahil, you find out what their issues are first, and then you communicate to them how you can solve them with your unique skill set. What are your issues with Dogma? Should someone ever listen and they're like, I want to work for this team?
It's funny, the issues haven't come up yet because we're not live yet. Once they do, then we're going to have all kinds of problems. Like, we're going to have so many things to deal with and understand. I would say at the time, right now, this is part of my development strategy, is like everything's, I try to be as organized as possible when actually in the build process. That it's all mapped out. Everything's there, and I'm literally just waiting for the developer to finish. He just takes a card, brings it in, finish it, takes another card, brings it in, finishes it. Everything is in Notion. I run my entire life in Notion. So when they go to, if I go, I'll just pull up Dogma here, and I'll just show you really quick that So Matthias, who's our iOS dev, and you can see these are the ones that have been finished. He'll go in here. I see the what, bullets, exactly what needs to be done. Boom, done. Comments, here it is. Everything's documented, tab switch position, so it's not started, in progress, and completed. And Matthias will then push a test flight version. I'll check it out. I say cool, and we'll move it in the completed thing, and that's it. Same thing with Biddy is the same way. Back burner, next up, in progress, completed. And this is my day, all day. Everything, and you notice how everyone is even called engineering across all of these things. Happy detailers, the same way. We have all these tickets kind of organized. And, I'm the same way with how I have my own personal thing. Not started, in progress, with goals and all kinds of stuff. And this is where, this is my day today. And then I'll move it into the completed thing.
That's amazing. That's sick. Do you ever follow like any agile methodologies, or do you just sort of do what works? I don't know. Doing like
the agile, I tend to be more the base camp model, the 37 signals. Shape up is kind of the antithesis to agile, where you basically start with the problem first. So any ticket, especially in Gumroad, any ticket that starts with a problem, from a user problem or something like that, and then it goes right to appetite, not the solution. Appetite is how much time do we want to devote to this. So in Basecamp world, it's either 2 or 6 weeks, which is small cycle, large cycle. So if we say, okay, we need to add a calendar, well, that's a large cycle. What's the problem? Well, blah, 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 blah. How much time? 6 weeks. Okay, then the dev and the engineer scope it all out, and they hammer that scope to fit within the appetite, not with the solution. If we start from problem to solution, now there is no time. There is no time. It's like they just go on forever, and that's where it gets frustrating, and these projects just go out of control. So if you have a time box, then it allows the team, the small team of one developer, one designer, to work together to say, we can't do that scope. We can't do this. Let's get rid of this so we can hit their 6 weeks. At Basecamp, I'm pretty sure if they don't hit the 6 weeks, they scrap the whole thing. Like, I've never done that, but that's how they do it. They will literally not launch it.
That was wild.
So at Gumroad, we do a quarterly cadence where we have, Q1, 2, 3, and 4, when we have the different, in Basecamp world, they call it pitches. So these are all pitches to create a product or create a feature. So in that regard, it just creates a really organized, calm. Everything's very calm, except when there's like a fire to put out, like the servers are down. But like my day today is very low stress. It's very intense, but the stress is very low.
Mm. What is your role at Gumroad? Obviously, you're head of design.
Yeah.
Who do you report into? Do you do design yourself, or are you managing a team?
It's just, so it's Sahil and I kind of work together on like the features and product and things like that. And then Caro is a senior designer. She's an amazing designer at Gumroad. And Caro and I work on a lot of different things. We're working on an app called Flexile right now, flexile.com. And we're basically creating a build.com competitor for flexible companies that work with contractors. So that's kind of a big bet this year will be launched. And Caro worked on, yeah.
It's outside of Gumroad, or is that a Gumroad?
Inside of Gumroad. It's owned by Gumroad.
Oh, okay. That's
yeah,
cool.
so that's one idea that Sahil has, is that we'd be cranking out some of these new projects inside of Gumroad. And it's really fun because we already have the dev team. We just run our same process every time.
Do you see yourself as kind of like a product manager ever? Like,
Yeah.
Have you ever looked at data, making like theories about what works and what doesn't, and testing it?
Yes, absolutely. That's my day-to-day across all these products, especially my own, is I would consider myself more kind of head of product. I do not, even though I love marketing and things like that, I always bring in partners that are going to be able to handle that, or we bring someone outside, because I really want to be focused on the product. So I'm able to say, and I'm going through it right now with a new product. We're like, okay, what problem are we solving? Okay, let's map out the data structure. Let's talk to some users. Let's do some wireframes, blah, 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 and just run that whole process the same way pretty much every time I start anything new. And that's me, and why I'm brought into, when I'm with these startups and I have partners, my role is to get the product built. And that's what I do best. And I can hit deadline and I can hit the budget like pretty close. And just because I've done it over and over and over again, I know the things not to do. But that's what I get the most enjoyment out of, is like taking an idea, because most people don't know how to execute that.
Yeah, I'd like to add to everyone, you do know how to code SQL, am I correct? And
I can code. Yeah, so I'm most experienced with Rails, so I can build an app from the whole way up through the database server level. But I can build the MVP, but then once it gets into scaling and all the fancy stuff, I don't do that. It's just not worth.
But the key is that you can communicate your designs in developer talk and structure.
That's a super key point. Absolutely. And that's, when I hire a developer, I speak in developer terms because I would consider myself a developer. So I'm using developer terms like, hey, we're going to create a column in the database. It's going to be, the name of the field is this. It's going to be a string. It's going to be an integer. It's going to be whatever that is. And when I hire a developer, I do not rush that. I want to make sure I have everything on the table for them so they can do their best work with no friction. And I tell them that, I'm like, my job is to serve you. My job is to take all the friction out of your life. And I answer them as, I don't care if it's 3 a.m, if my phone's on, I will answer you. I am here to help you. This is not me telling you what to do. This is giving you the job to be done and helping you do it as efficiently as possible. I don't even have them, if it's a developer, they will not do any design. They won't even do any CSS because we just usually use Tailwind. And they love it because they don't want to mess. I'm going to be like, oh, I want to interpret Figma designs. Like, no, most developers, unless they're a front end developer, they don't want to do that. And I asked them, like, do you want to do that? Because we can, but if not, and then it reduces design reviews because if I have already designed, like, I'll start with the design system and I'll code up the entire design system. And then they're just using those components. They never have to design anything. So Hans, our developer at Biddy, or Matthias at Dogma, or Stavros at Happy Detailer, they've never ever had to design anything, or never had to interpret. They've never even seen a Figma document. They don't need to because I'll create the screens in HTML. We call it stubbing, so I'll just stub everything in. Everything in iOS in Xcode is stubbed out for Matthias. He never has to worry about spacing or font sizes or anything like that, so then it reduces design process and design review. It just goes much faster.
That's cool. So they can just go into deep focus and just smash it out. And
I tell them, I'm very detailed in, so like in this example, when we are doing for Biddy, we're doing this new sub and supplier subscription thing. So like every single one of those, it's like create a new plan user role called sub supplier, use as all the permissions, create a new blah, blah, blah. Like every single one of these and in the database, like it's as detailed as I can possibly get. Because now Hans has been building that and hasn't really had to ask me any questions, and he's almost done.
Yeah, that's amazing. Have you ever thought, or is it important to you to find a way that you can remove yourself even further from this setup as stands? Like you've got kids, you've got a wife, that's...
I actually love that part of it. Love that part. Yeah, it doesn't really take much time.
Yeah, that's amazing. You've carved out the role that you love doing.
Yeah, like my day today, given like 9 different projects, we'll hang up here. I'll eat some lunch. I'll work on Gumroad probably till the end of the day, till like 5:30. So like maybe 4 hours, 3 or 4 hours of just really cool work on Gumroad. And then I'll do some work tonight for an hour and then be done. I worked up until noon today before our call on some just different consulting things. Everything's very calm during the week. Sometimes things get a little bit intense, but I'm only doing the things that I'm really good at. And if I find things that I'm like, I don't need to be doing this, I'll hire someone to do that. That's been the 41-year-old Jack. Ever since I turned 40, I've been like, okay, I don't need to do a lot of these things.
Yeah, can you talk me through your day a bit? Do you wake up at the same time every day? Do you eat breakfast? Do you not eat breakfast? Do you work out? When do you take your kids to school?
Yeah,
how do you maximize the amount of efficient working hours in the day? Given that you must have a seriously distracted life.
I wouldn't say that I've totally mastered that, but it depends on the season and the time of year. It depends if the kids are in school or not. Right now, the season is I wake up at 6:30. I come down, I work out. I've been doing a lot of bands, like heavy band workouts. I was doing a lot of weights and I was just getting too, I don't know. My wife said I was getting too bulky. I don't know what that meant. And so that'll be my Mondays. And so then I'll drive the kids to school, come back 8:30, shower, sit down by 8:45, 9 a.m. And I'll meditate. I'm Christian, so I'll read my Bible and pray or whatever, and then start my work day. That silence, and I don't care what faith you are. If you don't have faith, you do have faith. That silence of me, sometimes I fall asleep, but like that 20 minutes to kind of read and meditate, and is just for me just part of my day, and it helps me kind of focus and think about others. It's a very private thing. It's not like I'm talking about it all the time, but it's something that's a key part of my day. And then I'll work till noon, eat lunch, and then on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So on Tuesdays I have jui-jitsu from 12 to 2. That's a big chunk of time, but I love it. Like I trained when I was young. I say when I was a kid. I was like 20. It was like 2004, 2005. I was doing jui-jitsu like all week. 4 hours on a Saturday. But now I have kids, you can't do that. So but I worked my butt off so I could eventually be able to do jiu-jitsu and hire, like I've hired the Marcel Fierra, who's the lead trainer there, black belt from Brazil. And we spend an hour together every week, and then plus an hour and a half of training in gi and no gi Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then Wednesday private lessons. So that is so fun, and I just get smacked. Like, I'm a white belt, so I go in and get smashed by like 200-pound Russian blue belts, Danny and Yuri, and I just get like destroyed. But it's so humbling, and it really, you can carry over so many life lessons to business and things like that, because it doesn't matter how cool you are, how smart you are, you can talk all you want. As soon as you hit the mats and somebody is, and that's the thing about martial arts, especially jiu-jitsu, is someone is trying to kill you. Like, the only reason why they don't kill you is because we're practicing and we're having fun. We're not trying to kill each other. But if Danny gets me into a choke, if he held on to it, I would die. Like, so being able to practice almost dying every week, and knowing that, I thought I was in good shape, I was lifting a lot, and then just getting thrown around like a rag doll you're just like, oh my gosh. And so it's very humbling, and you learn to respect the process, like not chasing belts, like just like with entrepreneurship, like not chasing the 30 under 30 or chasing all that stuff. It's really about what did you get better today? If I'll get smashed, for an hour and a half, and I learned one thing, like, hey, don't do this. Like, if I'm gonna hook a leg, like, go with both arms, because if I go with one arm, I get, triangle choke or whatever. So it's been super fun. It's a great workout. And any kind of martial art is just, it's there. You'll never master it ever, which is so fun. Just like with coding, computers, it's always changing and adapting.
It's the infinite game, right?
It's the infinite game. And what is also interesting is that the most dangerous people, like black belt Marcel, who's like, was a MMA fighter and has like all these awards, 6th-degree black belt from Brazil, from like the Gracie family, who's the originators of it.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, he trained with Carlson Gracie, who's the son of Carlos Gracie, and there's the two brothers that started the whole thing. So he is so humble and so quiet and so unassuming, but he's so dangerous. Like, people have no idea. And the people who are the best martial artists, a lot of them are so confident that they don't need to talk about that. If you look at, I don't know if you follow MMA, but if you look at the difference between a Conor McGregor and Khabib is very quiet. Khabib destroyed, you could argue about it, but I watched the fight the other night again. He just dominated, and he's just a quiet, just gets the work done. And so, especially with entrepreneurs and startup founders, they're the ones that are the loudest about it. It's the ones that you don't hear about it. It's this guy, Chad down the street, who owns a window company and does tens of millions of dollars. He's, like, nobody knows that. Like, they may know the company, but like, he's not on selling courses on, whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
So that's what I'm learning too. It's just like the ones that don't have to talk about it all the time. It would be cool to eventually get to the point where you have so much success that you can put in your Twitter bio just like something stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, they're always flexing when they do that. They're
right. Like, what is Elon having his Twitter bio, or Jeff Bezos?
Yeah.
So and Jeff Bezos is the ultimate one. He doesn't have any of those things. He can give a crap. So yeah, I think that's the one lesson. And so that's my week, and pretty much just cool. Repeat that now. And then I'll do from 8, eat dinner with the fam. So I'm done at 5:30. I think for anybody who works remotely, especially who has a family, like, when you're done, you're done. So if you're done at 5:30, Dad is not working until 8:30 when the kids are in bed, and Marissa and I will watch Netflix or whatever, and I'll just do kind of mindless stuff on my laptop, just, closing things out for the day. Mm-hmm. And so every day, is 8 to 10 hours Sometimes more if I have to go really hard. But that's every day.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, I've read something recently about obviously your energy is highest and your creativity is highest earlier on, and then later on diminishes all day. So I'd like to highlight to people that it's a good time to do stuff in the evening when you could just do the mindless tasks.
I have
And
to
also,
force myself because I'm a night owl. I would be opposite. In college, I would stay up till 4 a.m. working and then sleep till noon. Like, if I didn't have kids and stuff like that, that's probably what I would do. I like to work at night when everything's really quiet, but I can't do that. And sleep is, as long as I get my 7.5, 8 hours, I'm good.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So this podcast is called Going Parabolic, and the whole point is like the exponential curve. It doesn't move until it does.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, like you've hinted at that there with jiu-jitsu. Like you don't follow the belts, you follow the process. You fall in love with the process. I think a lot of younger people tend to miss this. It's easy to get drawn in with social media to like whose yacht has who's got a yacht, who's got a Ferrari, all of these like fleeting things. I was wondering if you could talk to that a bit, maybe reference your story from the Etsy acquisition that fell through, with reference to celebrating early, and maybe the feelings you felt after that. But this is a long question, but I'd just like to end it. The way I picture you now is like a warrior that's taken 1,000 hits. So that the person you are now is ready to make that parabolic move, and it becomes more and more likely over time, to the point where you probably don't even care if that happens now or not, which is probably the ideal time for it to happen.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that too, because I talked about it with my wife the other night. I'm like, if I completely got rid of all my assets and just maxed out hourly work, you could make $700,000 a year easy. If you just maxed out, and all I did every day was clock in for 10 hours and did that, and maybe did it across 2 companies, and maybe up my hourly rate to 300 or whatever that would be. But that's trading time for money, so there's no return. It's just boom, that's it. It's just you do the time, you get and what happens if you're sick? You don't get paid. What happens if you go to vacation? You don't get paid. Versus for me, I'm looking for that parabolic growth where it's like, okay, I'm gonna just do enough hourly to keep things afloat, and things are starting to kick off cash, and eventually it's like, and this one guy Chris, who I'd listened to a while ago. He's like, you're going to work, get paid. Then you're going to work, get paid. And then it's like work, paid, work, paid. And then you're just paid. So you're decreasing that, but you have to play it strategically. Like all these other businesses, why am I investing so much time without a return? Biddy took like 2.5 years with $0 coming in. Now it's generating a nice amount of money, but not even close to where we want it. At the end of this year, we'd like to be pulling out each, in revenue, say we're pulling out of the company $200,000 each or something like that. Like that'd be really great. And eventually, this is an acquisition target because it's so niche, and we're going to be so good at it that, we could sell it for $30, $40 million. I could see that like very easily. But that takes a lot of people are not willing to do that. And sometimes you invest in these assets and you won't get a return. Sometimes you'll take the hourly instead of the equity, which is what Jonathan, I did with Jonathan, and it's the game that you play. So building these assets is set up to where the scale is there. And people say scale a lot and it gets thrown around, but like if I'm able to have 3 or 4 different businesses that I'm running the product teams, but like with different features, which is like what I love to do anyway. And each one of those is generating a few $1 million a year. Like that's and you have teams set up to do it with you, solving real problems. That's great. Like that sounds really fun. I don't ever want to get to the point where I'm not doing any of this. Like I don't want to just be lounging around, not doing anything, playing video games. Like my ideal thing would be like still work 6 hours a day, 7 hours a day, and then be able to have another like 3 hours of jiu-jitsu or at the gym or, I like to go out to the range. There's a local gun range here and be able to target shoot and things like that. Like all kinds of fun stuff. But again, I don't want to do it so I'm not working. I love working.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. A lot of people say, like, I'd say, what are your goals? Some people further ahead of me in their careers, and they're like, to retire when I'm 50. And for me, that's just
Yeah, no, that sounds terrible.
That sounds horrific. Are you all right time-wise? Because I want to ask.
I have like 2 more minutes. Yeah, because I have 1:30, so I got to jump over and get.
Okay, Jack, we're gonna need to do another call like in a year or something. But actually, so I've got 3 questions to end with, and it's kind of like a 3-2-1 format.
Okay.
And the first one is relevant because I hope we can speak again, and this will be a timestamp of what you thought now, and then it will come back to you. So what are your 1, 5, and 10-year goals for your Jack Zerby LLC?
So when I have these, I mean, there's very specific ones that I have like per quarter. Obviously launching Dogma is going to be a huge thing. I'm doing a cohort course with maven.com, which is going to be around deck design. So we're creating a whole kind of masterclass cohort thing around how to create really great pitch decks. So that will be launching soon. And Biddy will be launching a subscription service soon, which is going to be great. Happy Detailer's launching the next version. So these are all like very specific product ones. It's funny, in the last 2 or 3 years, we've been able to hit a lot of our personal goals. A lot of renovations we've done in the house. We took the kids to Disney, and we're taking them to Universal in the spring, and then we're going to Jamaica in June. So like all these things that we weren't able to do before. And because I put in all that work, it's finally catching up. And I'm 41. I've been at this speed since I was 16 years old. Like, I started designing on the web when I was 16, maybe even earlier than that. And I have never stopped, ever. I have been on the computer designing things for as long as I can remember. And now I'm finally starting to see the fruits of that. I had a sales mentor named Ray, who was like 90 years old. He is 90 years old. He's still around. Owned dozens of grocery stores and just very successful entrepreneur. He said most people don't really see success until their 40s and 50s. That's when it really starts to kick in. There'll be exceptions in the 20s and 30s, but really that's when you have just a lot more wisdom. So I feel like that's where I'm at now. And so these goals are, a lot of vacations with the family, which we're doing, more renovations in the house. And the 5-year goal, which I'd like to hit earlier, is buying land. I want to buy like a big chunk of land, 40, 50 acres, and be able to, have a cabin in there and be able to hunt and fish and all those things, 4-wheelers. And it's funny, I tell my son that all the time. He's 12 years old, and I'm like, when we sell this, when he's like, Dad, you're always saying that when I say that, when we do this, I'm like, because you got to speak it. Like, you got to say it. You can't say like, well, maybe someday, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I want him to hear that it's not immediate and that I know what I want, but I can't do it right now. Maybe I could, but it'd be too much of a stretch. I'm not in a position to do it right now, but to be able to write a check for $500,000 and just buy the land, no loans, just like boom, done, or $1 million, write a check, be done with it. And so I want to teach my kids those goals, and that would be for them might feel unrealistic. So that's I would say that's my 10-year goal that I want to hit in the next like 3 years, is to be able to have land. And I don't know if you ever watch Yellowstone, but it'd be, ride around my cowboy hat or something like that.
Oh, nice.
Which I look ridiculous on a horse, so my wife would laugh. I rode a horse. I was not very natural at it. But, yeah.
I've seen a show called Meat Eater, and the guy who goes around and takes people out. Have you seen that?
Oh, yeah, I love it, yeah.
The American countryside is insane.
It is really cool.
We don't really have wild animals, so yeah, it would be amazing to like hunt and fish and stuff.
It's so fun.
So, following on from that, what are the 2 traits that you'd instill in your kids if you could switch a button and they had it?
Would be, one is the hunger and the drive to keep going and to build and to create and to be resourceful. When I say resourceful, it's basically saying like there's a problem I need to solve and I'm going to create the resources or bring in the resources needed to solve that. I don't like it when team members show up and say like we have this problem without a solution. Like just go solve, just figure it out. Like I can't remember the last time I would just call up an entrepreneur friend and be like, I don't know how to solve this particular problem. Usually it says, I've solved it this way and it's not working. I've tried this, I've tried this, I've tried this. Have you tried anything? And I will go and try exactly what they tell me to do. And so I want them to be able to say like, hey, I want this new remote control car or something, or new Xbox game or whatever, and figure out how to get it. And don't come to me and be like, I don't know how, Dad. What do you think? I don't know. You figure it out. So figure it out is something for me. You know, I wanted to learn Rails, so I just figured it out on YouTube and stuff like that. And I wanted to learn Webflow, so I just figured it out. I didn't call someone and be like, how do you learn Webflow? Like, just Google it. So that's what I'd want them, to be able to do that and to be able to start companies. If they don't want to be an entrepreneur, that's great, but being able to them have control over their income and time.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then last one, bit of a random one, but what's your favorite healthy meal to cook or be cooked for?
Oh man, I love chicken and hot sauce. So like grilled
Just
chicken,
plain
or
chicken.
air fried chicken. The spicier the better. And broccoli. Like if I would just eat, because I just got an air fryer, but again, obviously fried chicken is not very healthy, but like grilled or air fried chicken with hot sauce and a side of broccoli and rice, like it sounds really boring.
Nah, I'm with you on that. My dad has an air fryer. It's
It's
fucking
so
incredible.
good.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and that's my kids would say my favorite meal is hot wings, and it is definitely my favorite meal.
That's awesome. Awesome. All right, sweet. Thank you so much for your time. That's an unreal conversation. I really, literally didn't even touch the surface, but I'm sure we'll have time in the future, I hope. How do you think the conversation went?
I think it was great. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about some of these things about goals and things like that. They're always in my head, but sometimes I don't write them down because I really do like the process where every day for me is like just like a new adventure and figuring out new things and new opportunities, and like I'm happy with that. And I kind of just, in a lot of ways, just whatever happens, like, and that's the fun of it.
Yeah, I agree. I like to think of it as like, my thing I always say every day is like make each day a masterpiece. Like every day you've got a blank slate to make an incredible day where you learn something, meet someone, do a sick workout, go for a run. Yeah,
I think people underestimate what they can get done in a year.
Thank you very much for your time. It was nice to meet you as well. Nice to meet
same
you.
here, Ollie. All right, well, have a great week.
Yeah, you too.
See ya.
See ya.